Good morning to all of you, and I really appreciate your coming here because, according to the meteorological prediction, this will have been the hottest day. The temperature expected today is 48 degrees for the maximum, but because there was a shower, it probably hasn't got that high.
Sir, I came here to save my power bill.
Very clever, because you should have told me. I would have put that so many more people would have come. See, instead of this is a good idea. I think that's one of the big purposes of this. That we are looking for ideas as to how to spread the message. I think you have a very nice idea. For the next events, reminders will say save all your air conditioning costs at home and come and enjoy yourself here. Uh, the This event is a very unusual kind of an event. Uh, it is labeled as a workshop or a seminar or whatever, but is actually quite different from that, because a typical workshop or a seminar has something which has been agreed, decided, and you are sharing with others. To me, this is more like a start of a movement. All of us see education is a very fun thing. Everybody is unhappy with the state of education, but nobody wants to do anything about it. The moment you suggest any innovative idea, there's a huge resistance. So it's very funny that with all the criticism, people don't want any change. For a long time that happened, and therefore we had different kind of systems coexisting. So we had systems like the IITs, we had systems like university, we had systems like Indira Gandhi Open University, we have a few attempts at e-learning and online learning, but these all coexist in different spaces. IIF. And I felt that if we learn from each of these things, we can put together something which is an important element of the solution for the future. The, uh, the changes which are happening now are so rapid and so far reaching that there will be lots of disasters if we don't respond in time. And this is an attempt to do that. I'd like to share a few stories to set the stage. The way we planned this session is that I'll make some opening remarks. Then J.M. Pant Jiten, my brother, as you can see, he will talk about a few unusual careers which people have often not heard of, but he has worked out in great detail as to how each of those careers can actually be pursued and so on and so forth. Then we'll have Anurag Bisht. Anurag Bisht is son of a colleague of mine, and he still can't get over calling me Pant Uncle, so don't be embarrassed if he calls me Pant Uncle. But this thing is, he is a very bright student, was in IIT Kanpur, among the top rankers, went abroad to do a PhD, fought with his PhD guide, unusual, then became an entrepreneur, decided to create a company. His parents were typical टीचर्स वेरी अनहैप्पी, इतना सब पढ़ने के बाद क्या काम करने जाना, ऐसे तो फैकल्टी बन जाता, बहुत अच्छा होता. He created a company, sold it for $550 million. He doesn't have all the money with him here right now, so don't get too excited. But it's an example of success. And therefore, he has a fair amount of understanding of what the world is like. And he's chosen a very unusual theme, that storytelling is the most important skill and probably better than an IIT education. I have always believed that there are lots of alternative ways of doing things, but for a long time we didn't have anything specific about it. But in the recent times, MOOCs have come up. Many of you must have heard of massive open online courses, which have been a great success. Some people call them not so success because only 10% people, few people have been able to complete it. So we have Dr. Ramesh Sharma, who will be talking about the landscape of MOOCs and how we can benefit. He will be doing one session here just after lunch. But on the 18th of June, we'll be doing a full day session on learning from MOOCs, because we realize that if you want to not study in IIT, not study in SAFEN, now you have to learn somewhere, and MOOCs is the way to learn. And one of our major problems is we don't know enough about MOOCs themselves, about how we can learn from MOOCs, and how we can get credits from MOOCs. The Indian government any day will announce its own MOOC platform called SWAYAM, which is under development. From what we know, Smriti Irani wants to launch it on 15th of August, but it will be done sooner or later. But so therefore now there is in some sense de facto recognition also. So there is an Indian MOOCs which can give you credits towards Indian degrees and so on and so forth. So this is a whole bit. I will wrap up by talking about what is coming up as the fourth industrial revolution, and which is where I firmly believe that the traditional educational models will not be relevant. So in some sense, I have started calling IITs as either irrelevant institute of technology or institute of irrelevant technology, whichever you prefer, because they have been something which were there at the time. Let me say a few more stories before we ask Jiten to do this. To put this in a larger picture, I want to share with you some things which are not so well known. Firstly, IIT Kanpur, to which I belong, he belongs, and which I personally think is among the best IITs. Why do you think it was created? How was IIT Kanpur created? Say something. Why do you think? Somebody in a dream felt that we must create a great institute of excellence, or anything else?
To cater the need for next revolution.
Huh?
To cater the need for next industrial revolution.
Okay.
To get raw material for advanced world. It was
Okay.
not our decision, it was somebody else's decision. They wanted robots or people who can fulfill their needs.
Right. So it was our decision with the benefit of the other people. It was quite a bit our decision as well. And I think you raised something to which I wanted to draw attention. Yes, you have any idea? Something to say?
I think I heard somewhere something
Huh.
related to something with British at that time. I was not able to exactly, but I think the British at that time,
Huh.
when they were here in India,
Huh.
had something to do with them also. About this.
Yeah, see, later what happened when the IIT idea came, the IIT Kanpur was created with US collaboration, IIT Delhi was created with British collaboration, IIT Madras was created with German collaboration, and IIT Bombay was created with Russian collaboration. So that's how they did these things. But the whole story is very interesting. It was not created out of any serious understanding or decision. I don't know whether anybody is old enough, but around 1957 or so, we went through a big food crisis in which wheat was imported from the US under what was called PL 480. Now, it was a very funny position. PL 480 wheat was kind of reddish in color, was thrown to ration shops, we were dependent upon it. India took that wheat from US, and it's called PL 480 because they had to pass a law to give that called Public Law 480. And India didn't have dollars to pay for it. So India said, we are an honorable country, we will pay you, but we will pay you in Indian rupees, which you cannot use outside India because currency was not convertible. And the Americans said, fine. So the Americans were forced to invest that money in India itself, and they created the IIT Kanpur. And the benefit was that today, and Thomas Friedman says this in his book, that there is a pool of talent which fills up at Delhi airport and empties in Silicon Valley. And it was a double jeopardy, because your best talent is being robbed from you. This, why I'm drawing this story is this is the difference between a leadership which understands the future and a leadership which sees the short term. The short term, they said, we don't have money, they will come and do everything. But why will they come and do something for your good? Right? Not only that, you go back to Lord Macaulay. Lord Macaulay did the same thing. He brought in the British model of education and openly said he's creating a set of people who, ground in color, will think like us. And I'm saying this because it is very important. I'm a great believer that we need to reclaim learning. And we have to work for it. So, if Lord Macaulay brought in a model which forced British education for it, which produced what? Civil servants, clerks, etc. What did the IIT education do? It produced quote-unquote engineers, but there are very few actual engineers coming out of IIT. Most people coming out of IIT are selling credit cards, home loans, Flipkart, Amazon, and all these kinds of investment banking, and so on and so forth. So this is the interesting part. But what I'm trying to say, and that's toward the end of the fourth year, now I'm saying is a time when people can take charge of learning themselves. So you don't have to wait for the government to do that, to create either universities of the kind that Lord Macaulay talks about, Oxford of the East and Gorakhpur being Chicago of the East or whatever, but nor IITs which were modeled on whatever US universities, but a learning model of our own based on our needs, community-based learning, and fulfilling our objectives. So this is to me a very, very important big picture. The other part of the big picture is, just think, why did dinosaurs become extinct?
Because they failed to evolve. Because
They failed to evolve. Very good. And in more precise terms also, very interesting. But do you have any thoughts on why dinosaurs became extinct? They were very big animals, very powerful must have been. But you are absolutely right. It does not matter how powerful you are. It doesn't matter how intelligent you are. What matters is how adaptable you are to change. And that is the narrative that we want to build in our exploration and looking at exploration, which all of us are part of that exploration. You heard of the dodo?
Extinct.
Extinct. But what was a dodo?
It is a bird.
It was a bird
Not fly.
in Mauritius. It didn't fly and it became extinct. Now, any idea why the dodo became extinct? Broadly, it failed to adapt to change. More specifically,
I think it used to eat some sort of a weed or fungus or something like
Yes.
that, and due to some environmental change by some other organism,
Yeah.
there was no food and
it wasn't actually, it's very interesting. Of course, you can't really know, but dodo was a very fortunate bird. It lived in Mauritius, had a whole island to itself, and all the raw material to eat was around, so it did not develop instincts of survival. It didn't even fly, because there was no need to fly. See, normally it is flight or flight. You don't, so it didn't develop flying skills, because within range it would get whatever it needed. There were no human beings there. So it did not have this sense of fright. Fear was not there. So it could not fly. It was not afraid, had no fear. So when the Dutch came, they simply ate all of them. It was not the other survival. They were just eaten away. And it is very interesting. Normally, any other animal, you see, even a small bird, you go near that, it has an instinct and flies because we are much larger. The instinct of fear is there. And I'm drawing this analogy because this is what we are headed for. We have been put into complacence. The model of complacence that we have is if you go to a good school, good education, you will be very safe and you will not have to live in a non-air conditioned environment, you will be very comfortable, you are ready for extinction. And the new environment that is coming up is the environment of computers, machine intelligence, robots, drones, etc. And I think that to me is the more serious thing. That if I say this today, nobody will believe it, but our education system is actually like a dodo. It is waiting to be finished and ignored. And I'm not the only one saying it. Actually, C.N.R. Rao, who is our Bharat Ratna, said this in Rashtrapati Bhavan on 4th November 2015, in front of it, that 90% of our universities have up-to-date curriculum. Today is 28 May 2000. Nobody has said it is not 90%, it is only 89%. Even that nobody has challenged. No UGC, no AICT, no MHRD has challenged. And they've not even said Bharat like Kanhaiya is a Deshdrahi, right? Or let him prove. They've all accepted this. And probably the reason they have challenged it, not 90 but 99% are out of it. And what C.N.R. Rao is saying is of today. The story we are trying to share with you is of tomorrow. The next 10 to 15 years, you're going to see a very different world. And the good news is that you can ignore all these people and take charge. And Ramesh Sharma's key presentation is how you can take charge of your learning and how you can learn things by yourself, whether you are admitted to a place or not. And therefore, you can simply ignore most of the existing institutions. I'm sure some new things might come up, but that's it. So this is the key story that I wanted to say, and I'll conclude by just two more analogies. You heard of शतरंज के खिलाड़ी? किसी ने पढ़ी है शतरंज के खिलाड़ी?
अजीत अली शाह
So वो शतरंज के खिलाड़ी में he's telling them कि ये हो रहा है, ये हो रहा है, वो अपना बाजी में लगे हुए। वही हमारे यहाँ कभी प्रेसिडेंट रूल लगा देंगे कि ये कर देंगे, आसाम कॉन्कर हो गया। अरे आसाम कॉन्कर हो गया, पूरा देश तो अभी रोबोज और इनके आगे चला जाएगा। And there are many nice. There's a very nice video if you would see. I don't want to waste time on that. There is a very nice video if you Google "humans need not apply." A very nice video, 15-minute video, which tells you that there will be very difficult job, and he analyzes that humans will resist it, but he said economics always wins, and because economics always wins, and as you said, evolution. So today's evolution is driven not by forces of nature, but by economic forces, and therefore those who will manage. So in the African folklore, there are two very interesting models. One is called you all heard of the ostrich policy? Ostrich policy कहते हैं. Ostrich policy because when the ostrich sees any danger, it buries the head in the sand. Actually, this is a metaphor. He doesn't bury the hand. He just lies very low and hopes that the danger will go away. This is what we are doing at a national level. 21st century is century of Asia. We have a youth listening here. And so, like an ostrich policy, we're believing that some miracle will happen and I will remain alive. Giraffe is another African animal, again with a long neck. But when the giraffe senses danger, it actually raises its neck and wants to see further where is it coming from and what is it. And then decides whether to fly or fight. And I want to advocate the giraffe policy. I am saying we stretch our necks, see a little further what is happening, then decide that that is something to which we have to give way, but this is something to which we can respond when it's a giraffe is quite a strong animal. So many animals can just kick, etc., but it estimates. So to me, the strategy is not an ostrich policy of saying that somehow it will happen or we are a protected species or something, but that we will sort of be able to do. Finally, as I said, as a preparation for the fourth industrial revolution, and many of you have anticipated this, in the what we call the pre-industrial age was the age when muscular power was most important. Because muscular power was most important, hard-working people, strong people, all the warriors who fought with their own hands, they were valuable. And that's why men were more important than women. Women were physically, traditionally weaker, and most of the work had to be done. In the pre-industrial age, there were still machines. All of you in your class 8 physics would have read that the first machine was a lever, inclined plane. And this is what you see, all the big warriors, they have either a gada, or a talwar, or a spear. They were astra shastra, whatever we call, but they were all basically mechanical augmenting devices to the muscular energy. And they were all individual devices. Industrial age happened when you could do things which are massive in production. This happened with the understanding of steam. And steam engine and boilers were the ones which gave locomotion and factory production. Even today, every other day, you hear of a boiler accident which happened and so on and so forth. And this was the first industrial revolution. The second industrial revolution was when steam was replaced by electricity. So when Thomas Edison discovered or invented the electric bulb, that was the big change. And Edison's greatness is not just that he made the bulb, he made lots of other inventions, but he actually thought that to light a bulb there has to be electricity, there have to be plants to generate electricity, there has to be electricity distribution network. The company which will generate electricity needs to find an investor. That's how General Electric was born, and the whole ecosystem was created. It also had a very interesting impact on other economies. So prior to electricity, lighting was done by kerosene lamp. So in India, we called it kerosene, in UK it was called lamp oil, and the oil industry's main product was kerosene lamp. When Thomas Edison's thing had this impact, that people now no longer use kerosene lamp for lighting, The oil industry started working on petrol and diesel and petrol engines and diesel engines and automobiles to usher in the second industrial revolution, which basically meant petrol powered, diesel powered engines and electrical powered motors. And this is what we saw for most of the past history in the second industrial revolution. This is where engineering started coming, this started happening, and so on. 1969 or so is said to be the third industrial revolution, when electricity got augmented with electronics. So you had diode, triode, radio, television, IC, computers, etc., and which is what we are seeing. The IITs, BITS Pilani, other technical institutions benefited from the third industrial revolution because they were created in 60s. By the time it was 70s, these were ideally suited for using those kind of things. So the entire IT industry, they were able to leverage. And what we are talking about is the emergence of the fourth industrial revolution. And therefore, we are talking of a completely new set of things that are going to be required. And this is where the big opportunity lies. So the same benefit which IIT has got, and not only IIT, as I said, BITS Pilani, other similar institutions got in the 60s and 70s, is what people will get who will do things now. And that is the main story that we're talking. To get started, I approached some IITians to get information about the IITs. These are all named responses. I'm not sharing the names because I don't see any need to, but they are specific, they are not made up responses. And I asked 3 questions. Why is getting into IIT a good thing? Why is getting into IIT not such a good thing? And why not getting to IIT may be a better thing? And that's the narrative that we want to create. And the responses are very interesting. One creates a great network which lasts a lifetime. IITs are also good at developing one attitude. Getting into IIT, graduating from IIT gives you a lifetime worldwide recognized certificate of being intelligent. So I often say that if you have an IIT degree, the presumption is you are good, you have to prove that you are bad. If you come from studying MOOCs, people think that you are no good, you have to prove that you are good. That's the basic difference that happens. It also gives you access to a network of IIT alumni and startup and corporate, which is very true because it's your seniors and people who've done that and so on and so forth. Ability to get to know, it gives you an excellent democratic open environment. If you have a company of fellow students who are better than you, this is also very interesting because since the best people come there, the competitiveness is very much high. In your local school, you were the hero and without any effort you came first. Now you see hundreds of other people who are equally good, if not better than that. This can also lead to suicides because suddenly from a local hero, see somebody in that has to be the last person in the class also. And the person who was last to the first semester was still then first in his own local hero. And that's a big traumatic experience for people. Why is getting to IIT not such a good thing? This is very interesting because one, it says that if you see, the very interesting thing it has come up, and I will put it more colorfully. See, you get into IIT, the branch that you get has nothing to do with your aptitude or interest. So if you get such and such a mark, you get electrical, or you get mechanical, you get metallurgical, you get chemical, you get this thing. So this is very funny. Because of your performance in that entrance exam, you get a branch. It has nothing to do with your abilities, interests, and so on and so forth. So that's a very interesting one. The other is that it boxes you into a field, and there's very little flexibility in the system. And then you become part of a rat race. You find after you might find engineering is not your thing. So I know of many people who actually have gone through. I know somebody who was very bright, and his father was an engineer in the rights. So he said, you have to do engineering. So he did engineering. When he completed his engineering, he said, I'm going to Columbia to do communications. Today he's a very well-known professor of communications and dealing in the field of diffusion of innovation and so on. I had a friend of mine in school. He came from a very literary family. His paternal grandfather was Munshi Premchand. His maternal grandmother was Subhadra Kumari Chauhan. He gave the IIT entrance exam to show that he's as good as anybody else. Then decided to do BA English, MA English, was a Rhodes Scholar, was a professor in Allahabad University. And he is a big discussion. Technology is dehumanizing, arts are liberating this. And one of the ironies of life is he became a professor of English in IIT Delhi. This is a very interesting destiny kind of a thing. Pressure of parents to excel. Why not getting into IIT somewhere? And somebody said very nicely, failure teaches what success doesn't. I think this is a very interesting thing because when you wanted to do something very well, so and suddenly, the second one, you are suddenly relieved of all stress and can enjoy your studies in life in college, university. So that's another interesting thing because you're not forced to run things and so on. So we did this because I wanted to draw attention to the fact that people who have gone to IIT and feel are not saying that this was the best thing that happened to them in their lives. This was a good thing that happened, and that's what I want to emphasize. Last thing, I can go on and on. So, one of our directors in IIT, Professor Sampat, had a very nice way of summarizing an IIT existence. He said the day a student joins IIT Kanpur, on that day his soul migrates to the US. 4 years later, his body follows. We have an example here. I don't know whether his soul migrated or not, but his body followed pretty much this thing. So that's the thing. And now we want to look at completely new things. So as I said, it's very good that you started by saying that this thing. I want this to be an interactive thing. This is not a destination. This is a kind of an exploration of possibilities of future. What are the challenges? What we have to respond to? And the big news to me is that we can do this without government intervention. So although I personally dislike the government, I say we are talking of a politically agnostic system. So I am not conflicting with the government. Government can do, and I believe government is doing the best it can. It just does not have the wherewithal. The world is moving much faster, and today we are talking about a situation where, see, when I was in IIT Kanpur in 1960s, we had the only computer center for miles and miles, Gabbar Singh कहता है, कोसों तक बने, right? We had the best library with all the latest books which were there, given as part of Kanpur Indo-American program. Students were given books which they could keep with them and return them after their term is over. We had a Van de Graaff generator which nobody else had at the time. So the whole issue was that you had resources. Today, everybody on his pocket has computing power. If you want more power, you can go to Amazon services, get all the computing power, you don't need a dedicated computer. You have a library of resources free available. Ashish Sharma will tell you under OER you can get almost anything that you want. So the whole issue is that now it is no longer a matter of resources, access a particular place. It's a question of whether you decide to do what you should be doing, and people should be doing lots of different things. It is not that everybody has to be just an engineer, doctor, lawyer. Completely new kind of things will happen. We're just discussing about ethics and robotics. So now you can't be taught this in IIT alone, and you can't learn this in a law school alone because they're teaching only IPC and CRPC. So many of the interesting areas are areas which there is no formal education available. The only way is informal education and self-directed education. So I hope you all contribute to this very actively. We hope to get connected, and then from these expressions we'll create a WhatsApp-based course, which will be for many more people, and we'll also especially like your views on things for students and things for parents, because the parents are also a very big stumbling block in the future of the children. So with these introductory remarks, I'll now request